Alright, after seeing that one, I had to share my view on the remake. The 1980 movie is definitely one of the most horrible and disturbing movie I have ever seen. Now let's remember that Maniac influenced a whole generation of movie makers who later used the character, Frank Zito, for the serial killer's figures. Indeed, from The Silence of the Lambs to movies like Seven, those typical featured serial killers will remain fixed in the audience's mind. Now that serial killers or psychopaths have become a more social phenomenon, at some point of fashion, one mustn't forget that Maniac was there before them all. So Maniac is a real descent into hell. You witness a maniac's downward spiral. Frank Zito is a schizophrenic man with troubles in relationship with Oedipus complex. So he massacres every young woman who arouses him sexually. Once he had murdered them, he scalps them and nails their hair on bloody mannequins that he keeps in his apartment bedroom. The original movie is crazy film. Extremely gory, it's heavy, unhealthy, morbid, upsetting, really sleazy. The director, William Lustig, really paid attention to the dark ambience, dirty settings, and really, the soundtrack, which is absolutely insane. You can hear the gasping and panting breath of fantastic Joe Spinel. That was totally unseen at the time, and still today, you can hardly find such a level of absolute madness on a screen. Both movies excel in the depiction of mental illness, schizophrenia. While we can see this behavior from the outside with Joe Spinel's acting, we can witness it from the inside with Elijah Wood's acting. Now the way the remake has been shot from this point of view technique has turned many people down, because you mostly see the killer in mirror reflections, and it takes some time before the full view of the actor occurs on screen, like at the 40th minute precisely. The first movie already offered a subjective view, which was definitely more used in the remake, through the point of view technique as I said. We were already following the maniac in the original one, remember? From the beginning on the beach, being in his own shoes, hearing his heavy breathing, living with him. I think both processes are successful and disturbing. In the remake, you literally are the eyes of the killer and you see yourself in the mirror after the commitment of terrible crimes. The disease characteristics such as fits, bad feelings, anguish and panic are really well depicted in the remake, showing the trouble the young man has with his sexuality. Like in the scene where we witness him dating a girl. They're in a bar or restaurant, and he suddenly feels terrible and that he feels that everybody in the place is watching him. So he has to go to the restroom to take some pills, and we see him in the mirror. Those fits are shown multiple times in the remake, and it's, I guess, a brilliant idea. Now, to all the people who said Elijah Wood was absolutely miscast in the remake, it can't be denied that Joe Spinel brought an unbeatable performance in 1980. He's middle-aged, rather ugly, and expresses more animal drives. He also evinces a deep sentiment of despair when we learn how abused he was as a child, with his prostitute mother mistreating him and not giving him the love every boy needs. Now, think of the remake clever way to revisit this. A young actor everyone loves as he plays the respectable hero in The Lord of the Rings. This is a terrific idea, fitting with the mental illness purpose in the movie, the concept of child man. Some people, like him, don't seem to get old physically, and this really conveys the ideas of a boy's trauma trapped inside a grown-up body. Although Spinel's performance is the one, Wood is somehow impressive in the movie. The scenes wherein both actors are alone talking to themselves or to the mannequins are creepy. When I first saw the first movie, I was struck by the ultimate splattered scenes, special bloody effects by the master Tom Savini. I was fond of those effects at the time, which are always shocking in Maniac. It's not the kind of gore you find common in zombie movies, in fact. Here it's totally shocking because it follows the madness of the character. Realistic. And that's probably where the remake messed up. Having put excessive splatter scenes in murders is not the most interesting. Those scalping, brutal scenes are for the beginner, in my opinion. And what's interesting, judging by the director's intentions concerning the remake, is the shooting of nauseating scenes coming after the murders. Both movies show that. The way killing makes them sick after they get back to a non-lasting reality. So in the end, the original is way more intense in its murdering scenes, not because of the visual effects of slaughtering, because of the way it is shot, the presence of Joe Spinel. I remember the murder in a New York subway being awfully suspenseful. That scene. The use of time and action is remarkable in the 1980 Maniac. The fear felt by the victims is oppressive and stifling. Spinel is the one. He is more threatening than a shark, taking his time to get his prey. The 1980 music is way better than the remake, although I salute the work to make it sound like a 80s score. In the remake, the song, which can be heard while Frank is being seduced by the red-haired girl in her apartment, is also to be heard in the Silence of the Lambs. And so it's a relevant tribute to another famous serial killer, as I said before. Anyway, the first score was more visceral and horrific, mixing flute, reminding the child state of Joe Spinel, Frank Zito, screeching violence for the killing and scalping scenes, and of course tense breathing of Joe Spinel. Psychologically speaking, the original depicts a lonely sick man, stuck in his desperate condition, yet he will eventually try to experience socialization and interacts with a woman. The same pattern occurs in the remake. Interestingly, it's a young man, a virgin, disturbed by his sexual impulses, who learns to be with a girl and develop a relationship with her. So she brings him into a world of art, creativity being their common point. Frank, like many schizoid people, looks very creative in Anna's eyes. Surely because he can't implement his creative sexual drive and procreate. And one great idea of the remake, which the original would probably have used if technology had been the same, is the dating site idea. This gives an actual plausible approach of how a timid psychopath would find girls. Another interesting reference is the scene where Frank and Anna go to the movies to see The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, a 1920 movie, a nice metafictional passage. One of the greatest horror films in the silence era in film, featuring common points with Frank Zito. Both movies present a story according to two mental sick characters. As the character on screen narrates his flashback experience, Frank does the same and lives his murder again. Both films are tremendously aggressive and brutal to women. I wonder how the remake could avoid harsh reactions like the first obviously received from feminist organizations, amongst others. I personally don't like the ending of the remake. Even the copying of the scene when Frank Zito has hallucinations and see the mannequins coming back to life. I think the music is bad and doesn't fit at all. Just listen to it. And it only hopes to persuade with the visual gory effects. That scene when it's the victim's turn to torture Frank was really better in the original, with the creepy gloomy music. Still one of the best horror remakes from its freshness. I would add that it was a better ending to save the woman in the original than killing her in a pointless fashion and scene in the remake. Here is the scene I would highlight. The scene that illustrates well how the first was more intense, heavier, is simply the first murder, when Frank Zito strangles a prostitute. Without the point of view technique, we still have access to what Frank is killing, but also to what the victim is seeing. That is, at least 30 long seconds of a crazy look completely insane look on Frank Zito's face, and this is terrible in a low-angle shot. After 14 minutes, it's like a warning to the audience saying, "Get ready for a dreadful mess."